What if the most powerful coaching insights didn't come from you or from your client even, but from like a storm forming in the background or a creek that you're sitting next to? I was working with a client years ago, and he was kind of circling around this deep emotional truth. And there was this storm forming in the background, and you could feel this building up of energy, both in him and in the storm. And as he began to speak, the thing that he'd been holding back from really touching into seemed to almost move in sync with the storm. And like the wind would pick up just as his breath would start to increase. And just right at the edge of that vulnerability, it started to rain. And it's almost if the rain like gave him the permission to just release. And he did. And that moment wasn't orchestrated by me. I simply just reflected what I was noticing, both in my client and in the land. And that allowed nature to step in as a co facilitator. It's a role nature often is ready to play if we're willing to notice. So today I want to share 6 subtle but powerful ways nature actively participates in coaching sessions. And that opening story is a great example of the 6th way that nature participates. So you'll see when we get there. But more importantly, I want to invite you to really reflect on your own life or in the work that you've done with clients. And I want you to see if you've noticed anything like these in your own experiences. So feel free to share anything in the comments and let's learn from each other through this. So we know that nature offers calming benefits and regulation and spaciousness and just a break from the daily grind. But the deeper invitation here is to listen, to notice, to partner with nature. And we're going to go through this one at a time so you can really take this in. So for me, everything changed when I stopped trying to be the only source of insight in a coaching session. And when I began to listen with my whole body to both the client and the land, a deeper intelligence almost began to emerge, not out of me, but from nature around me. And it made the sessions feel less performance oriented and more like a ceremony. Okay, so let's get into these. The first one I call the period at the end of the sentence. It's almost as if nature affirms the insight that the client had. Maybe a hawk crying right at that moment that your client faces a hard truth, or the wind stalling that in that moment of clarity. So think about that, like a punctuation at the end of the message here. Have you ever had nature affirm or confirm something for you or for your client? And what did that feel like? So number 2, I call it the interruption or the mic drop. Sometimes nature just cuts in and like a sudden gust of wind or a branch falling nearby, and it interrupts the loop and calls attention to the unspoken. Has nature ever interrupted a moment for you in a way that felt really meaningful? So number 3, I call this the repeated message or the messenger. Like a pattern keeps showing up, the same bird, the same tree, the same sound. And it's like where nature is repeating itself and you pay attention, it's not random. Number 4 is like nature fills in the blank. So it's like when a client is struggling to fill in the words, nature often supplies a symbol like a rock or a bird or something external that carries some kind of internal truth. Number 5, I call the objective perspective. And it's like sometimes we're so stuck in our heads, we can't quite see the deeper meaning or some sort of aspect of our experience. And we need to have some more clarity. So we can ask the land. And if we're willing to listen, we're willing to look for the answers, we look for how nature is going to respond to that and provide us with that insight. Have you ever experienced anything like that before? And number 6, like the story I shared before, I call it, it gets louder. There are times when nature just seems to direct the coach. You're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're feeling it, and nature is just saying, speak it. And it just gets louder and louder and louder. Okay, so those are the six. And I'd love to know what you would shift in your coaching if you expected nature to show up in one of these ways. What would it look like to create a session that made room for these co facilitations with nature? So the next time you're in session or even just on a walk, start tracking these patterns. Invite nature to be in this experience with you. Be curious, be reverent for nature. So, if you're wanting to learn how to bring this type of relationship with nature into your work and into your life more intentionally, then you need to come to our community council fires and start interacting with people who are thinking in a similar way as you. And you need to check out our Nature Connected Coaching certification, where we train you in how to have these kind of interactions with nature and with your clients in a way that's, I guess, second nature. So all the links are below in the description here, and we'd love to see you at one of our gatherings.